Never think money can't change a person. I used to believe that. Right up until the night I watched my best friend throw away 10 years of brotherhood, like it was spare trash on the curb. If you'd told me a year ago that the guy, who once pulled me out of a bar fight, would eventually put me in danger of losing everything I have, I would have laughed. Now the laugh gets stuck in my throat. It all started the night we got that rare vintage camera in the shop. An old collector's piece worth more than our entire month of business. The kind of thing people hide in safes, not carry around in backpacks. The client trusted us because we had a reputation, two honest guys, small town work ethic, no scams. But the moment that camera hit our counter, I noticed something in my friend's eyes, a spark I didn't recognize. Greedy, focused, hungry. I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. The next morning the camera was gone. At first, I thought he misplaced it. We searched everywhere. Shelves, cabinets, storage boxes. But the camera wasn't misplaced. It was taken. And the only two people with the key to the safe were me and him. When I confronted him, he acted confused, overly confused, like someone pretending to be surprised. His voice cracked. His eyes darted everywhere but my face. He kept saying, "Maybe you moved it. Maybe you forgot." I knew I didn't. I knew he was lying. Later that night, he showed up wearing a brand new designer jacket and a pair of expensive shoes he definitely couldn't afford yesterday. And when he raised his arm to grab a drink from the fridge, I noticed a watch on his wrist, one that cost more than we usually made in a week. My stomach twisted, but I still didn't accuse him. I still gave him the benefit of the doubt, because that's what you do when someone is like a brother to you. You assume the best, even when the worst is staring you in the face. But the truth doesn't stay hidden for long. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Tell Artyom his time is up. If he won't pay, you will." My blood ran cold. That's when I realized, this wasn't about a missing camera anymore. My best friend wasn't just lying to me. He was dragging me into something much darker and much more dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. The message kept replaying in my head until the words felt burned into my brain. If he won't pay, you will. It didn't make sense. Artyom wasn't the type to owe money. At least not the Artyom I thought I knew. But the new Artyom, the one who suddenly had designer clothes and a watch worth more than our shop's rent. I wasn't so sure anymore. The next morning, I found him already at the shop, pacing back and forth like a cornered animal. His face was pale, his lips pressed tight, his hands shaking even though he tried to hide it. When he saw me, his eyes flickered with something between guilt and fear. "Did you get a message?" I asked, my voice low. He froze. That was my answer. I waited for him to say something, to explain, but he didn't. He just ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "I'm handling it." Handling it. If he were handling anything, I wouldn't have received a threat from strangers. I pushed him, not aggressively, not yelling. I just wanted the truth. And slowly, piece by piece, he let it spill out. The gambling, the debt, the stupid idea that he could win back what he lost by borrowing even more. And finally, the moment he realized he didn't have anything left to offer, except the camera, the one that wasn't his, the one that belonged to a client with a temper of his own, I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "You stole from the shop, Artyom," I said quietly. "From us." He looked at me with eyes that were both pleading and ashamed. "I needed time," he whispered. "I thought I could fix it before you found out." But he didn't fix anything. He made everything worse. The people he owed weren't some friendly neighborhood loan sharks. They were the type who didn't care about apologies, only payments. And now they thought the shop was involved. Now I was involved. Before I could even process all of it, 3 men walked into the shop. Not customers, not curious passers-by. These were the kind of men who looked like they only smiled when something hurt. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't make a scene. They just handed me a slip of paper with a number, an amount so high my chest tightened, and a deadline, 72 hours. Artyom didn't meet my eyes after that. He just stood there, silent, as the men walked out. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't going to fix this. He expected me to save him, but saving him meant sacrificing everything I had built, everything we had built. And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't know if he was worth saving anymore. I closed the shop early that day. I didn't even bother to come up with an excuse for the clients who managed me. My head was too full, my pulse too loud. For the first time since we opened the place, the shop felt like a trap instead of a dream. Every shadow outside the window made me flinch. Every passing car sounded like it might stop and bring those men back. At home, I sat in the dark for almost an hour before my phone buzzed. "Artyom, we need to talk." I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear another excuse or lie. But avoiding him wouldn't erase the number on that slip of paper. So I told him to come over. When he arrived, he wasn't the Artyom I used to know, the confident, charming guy. who could talk anyone into a smile. He looked like a man who had already given up, shoulders slumped, eyes empty, like he was waiting for life to hit him again. He sat across from me, but he couldn't even hold my gaze. "Say it," I told him. "Everything. No more half-truths." He inhaled deeply and finally let it all spill out. The debt was bigger than he initially said. The gambling wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months. He hadn't been making smart investments. He hadn't been saving for a trip. He had been trying to cover up a snowball of bad decisions until it grew into an avalanche. "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked. "We're partners. You always believed in me," he whispered. "I didn't want you to see me like this." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout at him for dragging me into this, but all I felt was a cold, heavy disappointment. Then he said something that twisted the knife even deeper. "I need your help, bro. Just this one last time." One last time. As if the thousand little last times before hadn't already drained me. I stood up and paced, running my hands through my hair. I thought about the shop, my savings, my future, everything I had fought for. And then I looked at him, my friend since childhood, the guy who stood by me through breakups, failures, and family fights. But was that guy still sitting in front of me? "You're asking me to pay your debt," I said. "Money I don't have. Money that isn't even mine to lose." He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just nodded, eyes full of desperate hope. And that's when something inside me snapped. "You didn't come here for forgiveness," I said quietly. "You came for a bailout." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. In that moment, I realized he hadn't just betrayed my trust, he had taken advantage of it. He put me, my livelihood, and my safety on the line, and now he wanted me to fix it. The worst part, a small part of me still wanted to help him, but the smarter part, the part that had been ignored for far too long, was finally starting to wake up. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Artem's face, desperate, hollow, expecting me to save him like I always had. And for the first time in my life, the thought didn't make me feel loyal, it made me feel used. By morning, my decision wasn't fully formed, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, I needed answers. Real ones. The kind he couldn't twist or sugarcoat. So I went back to the shop. I opened the drawer where I'd hidden the slip of paper with the number the men gave me. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. For a moment, I questioned everything. Was I really about to call a loan shark? What was I expecting? A polite explanation, but living in the dark was worse, so I dialed. The man who answered had a voice like gravel. "You're calling for Artem," he said before I could speak. "Good. Saves me time." My throat tightened. "I need to understand what's going on." He chuckled, slow, cold. "Your friend owes 30,000, not 5. And he promised to pay with your business if he failed." My stomach dropped. 30,000. And he had put my shop, my dream, my future, on the table without even asking. I leaned against the counter, feeling the room spin. Why involve me at all? Because, the man said, Artem said you two are like brothers, and brothers don't let each other die in the gutter. The word die hit me like a punch. Before I could say anything else, he added, "We'll give you a week, pay, or the shop becomes ours, and maybe more." He ended the call. I stood there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. A week, 30,000, and a threat that felt too real to ignore. For a long minute, I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Then another realization hit me. Artem hadn't just lied. He had gambled with my life. When he finally showed up at the shop later that day, I didn't wait for excuses. I met him outside, grabbed him by the shirt, and slammed him against the wall so hard the entire building seemed to shake. 30,000, I shouted, and you put my business on the line without telling me. He looked stunned, but not surprised. And that told me everything. He knew what he'd done. He just hoped I'd never find out. "Bro, I was going to fix it." "Stop calling me bro." My voice cracked with rage. "You don't get to use that word anymore." People passing by stared, but I didn't care. My whole world was burning, and the one person who should be warned me was the one holding the match. "You don't understand," he said, rubbing his face. "I didn't have a choice." "Neither do I said, "but unlike you, I'm not going to drag someone else down to save myself." His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw something in him I had never seen before. Resentment. Like I was the one betraying him. "You're really not going to help me?" he asked quietly. "Not with this. Not anymore." He stared at me, and something in his expression shifted, like a door closing. "Fine," he said, "but remember this. When everything falls apart, don't come crying to me." And then he walked away. No apology, no guilt, just anger. That's when I realized this wasn't just a story about debt, or danger, or bad decisions. This was a story about losing someone I thought would stand by me forever. But the worst part, I had no idea that the real betrayal, the one that would break everything, was still ahead. I thought that cutting Artyom out would bring relief, peace, maybe even safety. But instead, the silence that followed felt heavier than his lies. For the next few days, I focused on solutions, real ones. I met with my bank, called every supplier I trusted, even looked into selling some equipment. I wasn't going to let some criminals take the shop I had built from scraps and sleepless nights. But every option ended the same way: not enough. Not fast enough. Not 30,000 in a week. By day 5, the pressure felt like a fist around my throat. That morning, as I opened the shop, I noticed something strange. The door wasn't fully closed, it looked slightly cracked. My heart dropped. I always double-checked the lock. Always. I pushed the door open slowly. The shop was a disaster. Shelves overturned, tools smashed, glass everywhere. My projects, pieces I'd been working on for weeks, were torn apart like trash. It looked like a storm had hit. But a storm doesn't spray paint a message across the back wall. 1 week is over. My hands trembled, not from fear. This was something colder, something sharper. And then I noticed something else. Footprints. Dirty ones, leading toward the workshop in the back. I moved slowly, each step echoing like a warning. When I reached the door, I pushed it open and froze. Artyom was sitting inside. Not the Artyom I grew up with. Not the friend who shared meals with me when we had no money. Who walked home with me in the rain after school. Who talked about dreams bigger than either of us. This Artyom looked hollow, tired, cornered. But the moment he saw me, he smirked, like he had been waiting. "So," he said, leaning back on the stool, "now you understand what I was dealing with." My voice came out low. "Dangerous? You did this." He shrugged. "They said they'd leave you alone if I helped. I didn't have a choice." "Didn't have a choice?" I stepped closer. "You destroyed my shop, my life. For what? To buy yourself more time." He stood up slowly. His eyes were cold. "If you had just helped me, none of this would have happened." That's when it hit me. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't scared. He was blaming me. The betrayal I feared, the one I thought already happened, was nothing compared to this moment. "You sold me out," I whispered. "You actually did it. You think you're better than me," he snapped. "With your little business, your safe life, you owe everything you have to me. And now you want to pretend you don't." I stared at him. The friend from my childhood was gone.